Sela's Drenner needed new office space, not a woman with paint on her cheek and zero patience for his sarcasm. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored navy jacket as he stood in the middle of a sunlit loft in downtown Seattle, waiting for the realtor to arrive. It was the third property today, and none had impressed him. His company, Drenner Innovations, a tech consulting firm that had exploded over the last 5 years, was rapidly outgrowing their current office space. He didn't have time for charmless buildings or pushy realtors. The door opened. "Sorry I'm late," came a voice clear, confident, and laced with something dryly amused. Sela's turned and paused. She was nothing like the other realtors he'd seen this week. No stiff power suit or forced smile. She wore a cream blouse tucked into high-waisted black pants, her auburn hair in a loose braid that looked like it had been redone in the elevator. There was a streak of pale blue paint on her cheek. "You're not who I expected," he said. She arched a brow. "And you're exactly what I expected." Sela's Drenner, millionaire tech guy, likes clean lines, hates wasted time. "Let's get to it," he blinked. "You researched me." "I like knowing who I'm dealing with," she said, walking past him toward the window wall. "I'm Evelyn Ross. And this is the best office you'll see all week." He followed her, half amused, half intrigued. "Confident, honest," she said, turning. "This space is 2 floors, unobstructed city views, and the zoning allows for rooftop expansion. Plus, it's 5 minutes from the financial district. You want sleek, you want power. It's this or you keep wasting your time." Sela's glanced around. The space was impressive. Sunlight poured in from the floor to ceiling windows. Exposed brick lined the walls, and the bones of the place practically screamed potential. Still, he couldn't help but challenge her. "You always this direct with clients, only the ones who walk in looking like they own the city," she said, flashing a quick smile that grounded him more than he expected. "Come on, I'll show you the upstairs." As she led him up the industrial staircase, he caught himself watching the sway of her braid and the confidence in her stride. She wasn't trying to charm him. She didn't care who he was, or maybe she did, but she wasn't impressed by it. He liked that. "Why the paint?" he asked once they reached the top floor. She touched her cheek and frowned. "Oh great, I was helping my sister paint her nursery this morning. Forgot to check the mirror." "You're a realtor and a painter." "No," she said, laughing. "I'm a realtor with a family. Real people exist outside of polished listings and overpriced coffee." Sela's leaned against the railing. "You're not what I expected." "Good," she said, tapping a stack of papers against her clipboard. "Because I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to help you find the right space." He stared at her, then down at the view. The city stretched beyond the glass, bold and full of possibility. But it wasn't the view that held him there, it was the feel of her presence beside him. "Dinner," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Excuse me, you're straightforward, so I will be too. Dinner tonight, my treat." Evelyn looked at him for a beat, then laughed. "You're asking your realtor out during a showing. Technically, the showing's over. And technically, I'm asking a woman who just told me she likes honesty." She tilted her head. "And if I say no, then I'll find another way to see you again." She looked at the skyline, then back at him. "I finish work at 7. You want to pick me up, bring a real plan. No boardroom dinners or rooftop cliches," he smiled. "Deal." At exactly 7:15, Sela's pulled up in a sleek black luxury sedan outside the boutique brokerage on 3rd Avenue. He stepped out, adjusting his jacket, and saw her waiting on the sidewalk. She'd changed into a navy dress that hit just above the knee and heels that made her legs look dangerous. He opened the door for her. "I hope you're hungry." "Depends," she said, sliding in. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere no one's ever taken you before," he said, eyes on the road as he drove. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a private rooftop terrace, not a restaurant, but a garden. Strings of lights hung overhead, and a private chef was already plating dishes at a small table set for 2. "You rented a rooftop garden?" she asked, stepping out with wide eyes. "I own the building," he said simply. "Figured it was time I used it for something other than board meetings." She walked ahead, hands in her coat pockets, her voice quieter now. "This is actually really nice." They sat down, and the first course appeared handmade gnocchi with wild mushrooms. Sela's watched her as she took the first bite. "Okay," she said, eyes lighting up. "You earned points," he chuckled. Good, I was worried the millionaire thing might scare you off. It doesn't scare me, she said, meeting his gaze. I've just seen too many guys who think money replaces effort. Doesn't, he said, voice low. Not when it matters. Her eyes lingered on his. The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter, wine, and questions. He learned she bought her first car at 16 by working weekends at a diner. That she'd been in real estate for 6 years and loved it because she liked matching people with places that made them feel something. That she hated olives but loved anything with lemon. And when she laughed, really laughed, it made his chest ache in a way he hadn't felt in years. And Evelyn. She learned that Silas wasn't just a millionaire with a gorgeous face and intimidating presence. He was sharp, thoughtful, and surprisingly genuine. He asked questions and listened. He didn't talk about himself unless she asked, and when he did, there was something raw in his honesty that caught her off guard. By the time he walked her to her door at the end of the night, the air between them buzzed with something undeniable. She turned toward him. "This isn't what I expected when I showed you that office." He stepped closer. Same. Their eyes locked, and he hesitated only for a second before leaning in. The kiss was soft, unexpectedly gentle for a man like him. But it deepened quickly, her hand gripping his jacket, his fingers tracing her jaw. When they pulled apart, her voice was breathless. "I don't mix business with I already decided I'm buying the office," he said. "So we're not mixing anything." She laughed, shaking her head. "You're trouble," he grinned. "You have no idea." Silas wasn't used to distractions, but for the last 4 days, he couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn Ross. It wasn't just the rooftop dinner or the kiss that had thrown him completely off course, it was the way she'd looked at him. Not like a man with status or a wallet full of black cards, but a man who still had parts to figure out. And that look had followed him into meetings, across spreadsheets, and through sleepless nights. He stood inside the empty loft that was now officially his, the contract signed, and the keys delivered an hour ago. The space felt different now, alive somehow. Maybe because he could still hear her footsteps echoing on the upper floor. Or maybe because the last time he'd been here, everything had started to shift. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom on his phone. "Mr. Drenner, Evelyn Ross is here." He turned from the window. "Send her up." Evelyn arrived seconds later, stepping into the loft in a tailored blazer and ankle boots that clicked against the hardwood. Her eyes didn't scan the view this time. They went straight to him. "You didn't mention you'd already finalized the paperwork," she said, setting her leather folder on the kitchen island. "Most clients would have at least waited for a walkthrough." "I'm not most clients," Silas said, already walking toward her, "and I didn't need another walkthrough." "I knew I wanted it." She raised an eyebrow. "The building or the dinner?" He stopped in front of her. "Both," she exhaled softly. "I'm here because I wanted to drop off the last of the permit filings. But if you're expecting that kiss to change anything, I'm not," he interrupted. "But I do want to see you again. Not as your client. I'm officially off your books, Evelyn." She crossed her arms. "Silas, I can't just jump into something because we had one great night." "I'm not asking you to jump," he said. "I'm asking you to consider the possibility." Her gaze held his, contemplative and cautious. Then she reached into her folder, pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to him. "What's this?" "My schedule for the week," she said. "If you want to see me again, pick a time, but no surprises." No rooftop dinners, just one normal evening. Silas unfolded the paper, scanning the neat handwriting. "Thursday, 8 o'clock, I'll pick you up." He expected another protest. Instead, she nodded once and turned to leave. At the elevator, she looked back. "Just so you know, I don't date men who think control is a personality trait." "I don't date women who play it safe," he replied. Her laugh echoed through the loft as the doors closed. Thursday arrived with heavy skies and a restless energy Silas couldn't shake. He'd chosen a quiet Italian place tucked behind a bookstore in Capitol Hill. No valet, no velvet ropes. Just dim lighting, handmade pasta, and a wine list that didn't scream for attention. When Evelyn stepped out of her apartment building, he had to pause. Her outfit was simple, but there was a quiet elegance to it, like she didn't need to try, and somehow always looked better because of it. "I was half convinced you'd show up in a helicopter," she said, opening the passenger door herself. "Too windy tonight," he said. Besides, I thought I'd try earning your trust instead of buying it. She gave him a sidelong glance. That's a start. Dinner was different from their first night, slower, measured. Silas didn't lead the conversation, he let her, and Evelyn surprised him again. My parents ran a community theater, she said between bites of linguine. I grew up backstage more than at home. It made me fall in love with spaces, how they shape people. He leaned in. Is that why you went into real estate? Eventually, she said. I did a bunch of things first. College, a year in London working for an architecture firm, then back here. I didn't want to sell houses. I wanted to match people with places that made them feel like they'd arrived. You ever feel like you've arrived? He asked. Evelyn hesitated, twirling her fork. Sometimes. But it never lasts long. Silas rested his elbows on the table, watching her. That's the first thing we have in common, her eyes flicked up. You don't strike me as someone who ever doubts where he belongs. I doubt it every day, he said. That's what keeps me moving. They didn't touch on work or money. They talked about things that didn't come with contracts, favorite cities, fears they hadn't voiced in years, what it meant to build something that lasted. When she laughed at something he said about failing his driver's test 3 times, he realized he hadn't heard that sound from anyone in weeks. After dinner, she didn't ask him up, but she didn't rush inside either. They stood at the base of her building, the glow from the street lamp casting soft shadows across her face. I meant what I said the other night, she said quietly. I don't do this often. I know, Silas said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. And if you asked me a month ago, I'd have said I didn't have time for this. But now I'm making time. She looked up at him, a flicker of something unspoken in her eyes. Then she stepped back. Good night, Silas. He watched her walk inside, her figure disappearing into the lobby. He didn't move for a full minute. Back in his car, he stared at the wheel, jaw tight. Something had shifted tonight, something big. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't a distraction anymore. He was falling. And Evelyn Ross had no idea. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder as she balanced a cappuccino in one hand and a stack of floor plans in the other. She glanced at the screen site visit at 11, appraisal walkthrough at 2, and dinner with Silas at 7. She sighed. Not because of the full schedule, but because of how easily he'd made himself part of it. He hadn't been pushy. He hadn't even called her since their last night out. But his presence lingered in her mind, constant and uninvited. When she walked past a building with sharp glass corners and clean lines, she thought of his office. When she poured her morning coffee, she remembered his quiet laugh when he'd called her out for drinking it black, like a woman on a mission. And when she caught herself smiling at nothing, it was because of him. She hated that, because she'd worked hard to keep her life separate, controlled. She didn't date clients. She didn't date men who came wrapped in tailored restraint and checkbook confidence. And she especially didn't date men who made her feel like the ground might shift under her if she let go for even a second. It was almost a relief when her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a reminder, it was her sister. Hey, Evelyn said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she flipped through the blueprints on her desk. You sound winded, her sister teased. Running from your feelings. Very funny, I'm at the office. Which office? Your brokerage or the one you basically gifted to a tall, brooding man with a private chef? Evelyn rolled her eyes. I didn't gift him anything. He made an offer above asking and closed in 2 days. And he kissed you. There was a pause. You didn't tell me that part, her sister added. Evelyn leaned against the window. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It just happened. Right. Like babies just happen. You're a menace. I'm your sister, and I know you haven't let anyone past that iron-cased heart in years. Evelyn didn't respond. The silence stretched. Look, her sister said more gently, just promise me you're not keeping your distance because it's safe. Sometimes the things that scare you are the ones worth stepping into. Evelyn rubbed her temple. I'll think about it. Tonight, Evelyn ended the call without answering. That evening, Silas was already waiting when she stepped into the jazz lounge he'd chosen. It wasn't flashy. No velvet ropes, no reserved table with his name on it. Just a quiet, intimate space where the music filled every corner and the lights were low enough to let people drop their masks. He stood when he saw her, and this time his eyes didn't rake over her. They settled. You look tired, he said. I had back-to-back properties all day, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. And I had to talk a couple into not putting a koi pond in their foyer. Koi pond. They saw it on a celebrity home tour. Now they think fish are the key to luxury. He laughed, low and genuine, and it did something to her chest that she didn't appreciate. The waitress brought over 2 glasses of red wine. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Don't worry, he said. I didn't order on your behalf. I just figured we'd need something to loosen up. I'm perfectly loose, she said, taking a sip. But thank you. The band started to play, something slow and haunting, the kind of song that made you remember things you hadn't even realized you'd forgotten. I've been thinking about you, Silas said. Evelyn set her glass down. You're not subtle, are you? I've spent most of my life building walls, he said. Figured I'd try something different. You don't have to try so hard. I'm not, he said. That's the problem. She looked at him, really looked. He wasn't guarded tonight. He wasn't playing the role of the man who always stayed in control. There was something softer around the edges now. She leaned back. So what are we doing here, Silas? I was hoping you'd tell me. This isn't a game to me. Good, he said. It's not a game to me either. She hesitated. I don't let people in easily. I got that the minute you told me to bring a real plan if I wanted to see you again. She looked down at her wineglass, then back up. You think you want this. I know I want this. You've known me 2 weeks. Sometimes you don't need more. Evelyn's breath caught, not because of what he said, but because of how easily he said it, as if he'd already made peace with the risk. I'm not perfect, she said. I'm not asking you to be. The music shifted, the tempo slow and inviting. A few couples drifted onto the floor. Silas stood and extended his hand. Come dance with me, she looked around. Here? Yes, she hesitated, but something in his eyes stilled her doubts. She took his hand. They moved together slowly, her head against his chest, his hand warm at the small of her back. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The music filled the silence between them, and for the first time in years, Evelyn let herself drift. Afterward, as they stepped out into the cool night air, she turned toward him. Why me, Silas? He didn't hesitate. Because you make me want to stop running, and I didn't even realize I was. She didn't kiss him. She didn't promise anything. But she reached for his hand, and he let his fingers intertwine with hers like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for once, it was. Evelyn stepped into the newly renovated loft Silas's office, now fully transformed, wearing a gray wool coat and a quiet storm in her chest. The space didn't just look different, it felt different. Walls of matte black glass framed by warm wood accents, sleek, minimal furniture. A custom-built staircase that spiraled like sculpture. And near the far window, Silas stood in a navy sweater and dark trousers, his expression unreadable as he looked out over the city. He turned when he heard her footsteps. His eyes searched hers with the same stillness he'd carried since they last saw each other 3 days ago. She hadn't returned his call, not because she didn't want to, but because everything had begun to feel terrifyingly real. You came. I said I would, Evelyn said, pulling off her gloves one finger at a time. He nodded once, then crossed the room and opened a small cabinet near the window. Would you like tea? She blinked. Tea? I figured if I offered wine again, you'd think I was trying to distract you. She let a breath out through her nose. Smart. He poured 2 cups without asking how she took it. Set hers down near the edge of the conference table and leaned back against the windowsill, arms folded. He didn't touch his own. I don't know what we are, she said finally, wrapping her hands around the heat of the mug. And I don't know what you want from me. His gaze didn't waver. I want you to stop trying to find the flaw. I'm not, you are, he said softly. You've been looking for the catch since the first time we kissed, waiting for me to reveal I'm married or manipulative or incapable of anything real. She didn't respond, because he wasn't wrong. I get it, he added. You've built a life that works, you've got rhythm, control, and I'm not part of that equation. She lifted her eyes. I don't want to get swallowed up by someone else's world. Then don't, he said. Let's build something that fits both of us. Evelyn looked down at the tea she hadn't tasted. You make it sound easy. It's not, Silas said, but I'd rather struggle with you than be comfortable with anyone else. Her chest tightened. Not because of what he said, but because of how much it scared her to believe it might be true. Before she could answer, the elevator chimed again. Silas frowned. "I wasn't expecting anyone." The doors opened, revealing a woman in her late 50s, impeccably dressed in a plum trench coat and heels that didn't dare scuff. Her hair was swept into a formal chignon, and her eyes sharp and assessing landed on Evelyn immediately. "Mother," Silas said, straightening, "you should have called." "I was in the neighborhood," she replied briskly, stepping inside, "and I wanted to see the new space." Her gaze flicked around the loft with a practiced eye before landing back on Evelyn. "And this is Evelyn Ross," Silas said. "She's the reason I found this place." His mother's smile was polite and paper-thin. "A realtor." "And more," Silas added. Evelyn stepped forward, extending a hand. "It's nice to meet you. You're very young to be managing properties like this." "Experience doesn't always come with age," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. His mother's smile didn't waver. "No, but discernment usually does." Silas moved between them. "We're in the middle of a conversation." "Can I call you later?" His mother's eyes lingered on Evelyn for another beat before she turned. "Of course, I'll let myself out." The elevator doors closed behind her. Evelyn exhaled. "Well, that was subtle. She doesn't speak for me." "I didn't expect her to," Evelyn said. "But I'd be lying if I said that didn't rattle me a little." Silas ran a hand through his hair. "She doesn't like surprises. You could have been a concert pianist and she'd have asked why you weren't playing Carnegie Hall." Evelyn hesitated. "She's used to a certain kind of woman in your life." "I've never brought anyone into my life like this before," he said. "Not like this." Her heart stuttered. "I've dated," he continued, "but I've never introduced someone to my mother. I've never wanted anyone to see the whole picture." Until now. Evelyn felt the weight of those words settle inside her. She walked to the window, her reflection catching in the glass beside his. "I don't want to be a complication, Silas. You're not. I don't want to be a footnote in your world. You'd never be." She turned to him. "Then what am I?" He stepped forward, voice low. "You're the woman I think about before I fall asleep, the reason I check my phone on the hour, the person I want to tell things to when I don't know how I feel. You're not a complication, you're the point." Her breath caught. "And if I lose you because I didn't say that out loud," he added, "then I don't deserve you anyway." The air between them shifted. The room, the city, the noise of the world all faded. There was only this truth standing between them, raw and terrifying. "I've spent a long time avoiding anything that felt too good," she said, "because I didn't trust it to last. And now," she looked at him, her voice a whisper, "now I don't want to miss something that could." Silas reached for her hand. She let him. "Come with me," he said. "To where?" He didn't answer. He simply led her out of the office, down to the waiting car parked against the curb. The driver opened the door and they slid inside. They didn't drive long, only 10 minutes, and when they arrived, Evelyn's breath stopped. It was a historic building just outside the city center, 3 stories tall, faded red brick, ivy climbing up one side. The windows were boarded, but the bones were beautiful. "What is this?" Silas stepped out and opened her door. "It used to be a theater." Her eyes widened. "How did you know that you grew up in one?" "You told me." She looked at the building again, heart pounding. "I bought it last year," he said. "I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but now I do." Evelyn turned to him, confused. He took her hand. "We'll restore it together. Turn it into something that matters. You said you wanted to match people with places that make them feel like they've arrived, so let's make this that place." She stared at him. "I'm not giving you a building," he said. "I'm asking you to build it with me, a start. A home for something new." Something in her broke open. "Okay," she whispered. He kissed her, then not like the first time, not like the second. This kiss was an answer, a promise. And when they stood back, the city humming around them, Evelyn knew something with absolute certainty. She had arrived, and this time she wasn't walking away. Evelyn stood at the edge of the balcony inside the old theater, her hands dusted in plaster, her hair pulled into a knot with a pencil jammed through it for support. Below, crews moved through the open space, restoring the bones of what would soon become an arts and design center, one steeped in history, but alive with new purpose. 2 weeks had passed since Silas placed the keys in her hand. 2 weeks of shared plans, arguments over flooring, laughter over midnight takeout on a tarp-covered stage, and a growing sense that this wasn't just a renovation. Silas stepped out from behind the curtain. wearing a dark crewneck and jeans, his sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. "You're impossible," he said, crossing to her. "I asked for warm oak, not this yellow stain they tried to pass off as golden hour. There's a difference." "I know, I fixed it." Her eyes narrowed. "You called the supplier already?" "I called them yesterday," he said. "I knew you'd hate it. I just needed you to see it first so I could say I told you so." She stared at him, then let out a soft laugh. "You're learning." "I'm trying." He set down the clipboard and leaned against the railing beside her. The space stretched out before them, scaffolding along the walls, stage lights being tested above. But it wasn't the progress that caught her attention, it was him. The way he looked at this place like it was more than a project, like it was home. "You haven't said anything about the feature wall," she murmured. "I'm saving my opinion until I see it finished," he said. "But if I had to guess, you're going to change your mind about the tile in 3 days. She nudged him with her elbow. "Don't get cocky." "I'm not. I just know you." Evelyn turned slightly, her voice quiet. "Do you?" Silas shifted, his gaze meeting hers. "I know you stand with your arms crossed when you're overwhelmed but pretend you're just cold. I know you hate asking for help, which is why you double book yourself until you're exhausted. I know you carry a notebook in your bag that you write in but never show anyone." Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. "I also know," he continued, "that you're not afraid of what this is between us. You're afraid of how real it feels." Her breath caught. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The air between them was already full of everything unsaid. "I don't want to be a project, Silas," she said after a moment. "I don't want to be something you fix." "You're not," he said. "You're the first thing I've ever built that matters more than the result." The words settled in her chest, like something she'd been waiting to hear without realizing it. Down below, the construction crew began packing up for the day. A few waved as they left, and the space slowly emptied until only the two of them remained. Evelyn turned toward him fully. "This place, what we're doing, it's more than I ever imagined." Silas studied her. "So is this." She hesitated, then pulled a small velvet box from her coat pocket. He blinked. "Are you proposing?" She opened it to reveal a set of antique cufflinks brushed silver with tiny engraved maps on each. One said Seattle, the other said London. "I found them in a vintage shop downtown," she said. "The woman said they'd been separated for years. One came through an estate sale here. The other was from an old merchant family who'd settled in London after the war, two halves of the same thing, lost in different places." He looked at the cufflinks, then at her. "I know it's not flashy," she added. "It's perfect," he said hoarsely. "You didn't have to, I wanted to," she interrupted. "You gave me something I didn't think I needed, a place to land, a reason to stay when my instinct was to run. I wanted to give you something that reminded you of what we're building." He closed the box gently, then took her hand in both of his. "I don't want to waste any more time," he said. "I don't want to fit you into my world. I want to make a new one with you." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I love you," he said. "That's the simplest truth I've ever known." And for once, she didn't overthink it. "I love you too," she whispered. They kissed in the center of the old balcony, dust in the air, light spilling through the stained glass windows that had just been restored that morning. There was no audience, no applause, just them. Months passed. The building opened in spring, reborn as the haven of community arts and creative innovation space dedicated to local expression and mentorship. Evelyn ran the initiative that curated the artists and performers, while Silas built a tech lab in the back to support startups and digital creators. Every inch of the space bore their fingerprints: the warm oak floors, the roof-upholstered velvet seats, the gallery curated by Evelyn's former clients who were now part of the program's board. One evening, after the ribbon-cutting ceremony that drew a crowd larger than either had expected, Evelyn stood alone in the wings of the stage, watching the city shimmer through the windows. Silas joined her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Do you remember the first night I brought you to see this place?" he asked. "You mean when I almost told you it was a terrible investment?" He grinned. "Exactly. I thought you were out of your mind, and now," she leaned into him. "Now I think you were just ahead of me." He kissed her temple. "For once." They stood there for a while, no rush in their silence, no fear in what came next. They had built something lasting, not just a space, but a life, a partnership, a love that neither had seen coming but now couldn't exist without. Later that night, after the guests had left and the lights had dimmed, Silas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "What's that?" she asked. He handed it to her. Inside was a deed. "To what?" she asked, frowning. "To the building next door," he said. "It's yours." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because I overheard you last week saying you wanted a gallery space for the youth program. And because I believe in what you're doing. And because I love you." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "And," he added, "because I couldn't think of a better way to spend the rest of my life than finding ways to make your dreams a little easier." She launched herself into his arms without another word. They stayed wrapped in each other until the only sound left was the hum of the city beyond the windows and the soft echo of a love story that had found its ending and its beginning.